The G7 summit of the leaders of the world's most powerful democracies here in Alberta, Canada, has been dominated, of course, by the determination of these leaders to somehow persuade Israel and Iran to, in their words, de-escalate their conflict, or in our terms that means stop bombing each other. For the UK, however, there was an announcement that, I don't know, mate, you might think was a little bit sort of odd in the context of such an important global issue, but nonetheless terribly important to Keir Starmer and many British manufacturers, which is confirmation that the tariff deal that Keir Starmer negotiated with great fanfare a few weeks ago with Donald Trump has finally been, or it's about to be implemented by America. They put out a little video of Donald Trump signing the relevant executive order, and that means that in about 10 days' time, these lower tariffs relating to exports by a narrow number of British manufacturers will fall. There's a 3-day lag between the signing normally and publication in the Federal Register, and then after it's published in America's Federal Register, there's another 7 days before these lower tariffs come into effect. It was all a bit surreal when Donald Trump sauntered out and made this announcement with Keir Starmer, because what he actually said was he had good news. He had belatedly verified a trade deal with the European Union. I'm not quite sure how he confused the EU with the UK. He meant to say the UK, and I suppose Keir Starmer immediately made it clear we were talking about the UK and the EU, because he then thanked the American president. Now, we should be absolutely clear that the scope of this trade deal is relatively narrow. In fact, in that sense, it's not really a trade deal. It is a deal to reduce tariffs or taxes on a limited number of British manufacturers, but sectors that are important to the UK economy. So the automotive sector, companies like Jaguar Land Rover, had been seriously hurt by Donald Trump's increase in the tariffs that apply to them to 27.5%. That tariff has now been reduced to 10%. For our aerospace industry, which was subject to that general tariff of 10% that Trump has been applying to manufacturers all over the world, that 10% will fall to naught because Trump and Starmer have said they want closer cooperation between our two defence industries. There is one sector, important manufacturing sector, that will feel very disappointed by what's been agreed so far. That is steel. We have a fragile, vulnerable steel industry. You will all have noticed the rescue that the government recently put in place for British steel. Now, for steel manufacturers across the world, the current Trump tariff is 50%. For British steel manufacturers, it is 25%. And although in the original agreement between Trump and Starmer, the suggestion was that it would fall to naught, it's not falling to naught, it's staying at 25%. So for this vulnerable industry, that is going to be very painful because it is less competitive than the steel industries, steel manufacturers in other parts of Europe and, of course, in India and China. Putting all that together, what is my sort of general conclusion? It is that this is useful for the UK, not certainly transformative for the export prospects of British industry, but definitely useful, and I think politically, symbolic, and I think it's hard not to see this as a victory for Keir Starmer, since the UK is the first country to get a tariff deal of this sort with Trump, and who knows whether or not we'll end up being the only country to get such a deal. Trump said today he's hopeful that others will also manage to placate him and get better tariff deals, but they haven't succeeded in doing that yet. One aspect, though, that we will just have to wait and sort of judge whether in the end this is as good a deal as the government claims. President Trump talked in strong terms about how the reciprocal favour that the UK has done him is to massively improve terms of trade for food producers in America and ethanol producers. And in the food category, he seems particularly excited by the prospects for American beef producers. The British agriculture, British farming is anxious about this. We won't know for some time whether or not Keir Starmer has damaged our farming industry by making these concessions to Starmer. But in the rather beautiful surroundings of Alberta, Canada, this I think probably has to be seen as a Starmer success.